Okay, we are live. Second, we're gonna give just a moment to let YouTube tell everybody that we're live. I'm actually seeing the notification on my phone right now
Oh,
saying,
really?
"Oh, the sun just went live on YouTube." Yep. For the recording, this is all in the recording. So, greetings and in Lakesh, everyone who is will be watching this video. Oh, we got some chiming in already. In Lakesh and Veritas. Can I get a thumbs up or greetings in the comments just to know that our audio is good? Okay, good. Tamara said the audio is good, so we're good. So just so we get started. Greetings from Nevada. Oh yeah, let's go. Life with Lovey. I love to hear that. Thank you for the thumbs up. And Lakesh Studio One and Lakesh and Veritas. Let me just start by saying thank you to Enlikesh Studio One. So this episode of High Frequency Living is sponsored by Enlikesh Studio One. Enlikesh Studio One specializes in quantum light property clearing, divine feminine products, meditations, call for the truth divination readings. The call for the truth divination readings, you can get them in 1 card, 3 card, or 9 card spreads. You can visit enlakeshstudio1.com to book your card reading and receive a discount on a clearing for your home or place of business, your office, your home. Uh, Again, we always are in gratitude for Enliket Studio One for the support and for sponsoring this little movement that we're starting with High Frequency Living. Very grateful, and everyone who has the interest, reach out to Enliket Studio One. I put the website in the chat at the top of the chat, so you can visit the website enliquetstudio1.com and see what all is available. All right, so I'm sure everybody can see we are in two different locations. We're not on the couch. I am actually live from Florida right now, very humid, so apologize for looking crazy. However, no big deal. Whatever. We get by it. I'm in Florida right now. You are in.
I am in a rainy night in Georgia.
Okay, cool. So if
Rainy
you
night in
rainy
Georgia.
a little bit of thunder I heard in the background. So if you
Thunder,
blank out on a
lightning, all
yeah,
of
so if
that.
it blanks out, that's why. That's what's going on is she's in the midst of a storm, but I think we'll push through okay. And I'll just keep going and make up things as we go. If I need to. So I'll just share with you now. I'm in Florida visiting my children. Uh, my daughter's birthday was Friday, so I'm in Florida visiting, and it's kind of funny that we're having this dynamic and this conversation from me being here in Florida and you being there because what we were intending to speak on today is something that I is very near and dear to me, but also I think a lot of us are navigating this kind of situation, which is I'm striving to learn and understand how to best uh, be the evolved example and high frequency example as a parent to the children, while also dealing with the uh like I always like to say the karma of the things that I have uh brought into my life and that I have done and that I am through our lineage, through generations of family, but also through what I've done myself and looking to rectify and make right and heal from past experiences. So I'm experiencing this little like almost like a tug of war a little bit where where I'm looking to resolve things and heal from things that are about me, but I'm also uh looking to be an example of a already evolved or high frequency person for my children. So in certain situations where I would typically want to get into tit for tats and back and forths and I'm right and you're wrong or you should this or that and the third, although that might be my typical uh, exchange or way about going about things, I find myself being confronted with like, man, pursuing that lane of conversation or giving power or energy to things that are not of where I'm going or the highest of frequency, it's damaging for the children. You know, it creates unwanted and or toxic kind of environments. But I'm still struggling with learning, or I'm still on my journey of evolving and becoming greater and not being interested or led to being, to drawing into these low frequency interactions or conversations or tit for tats and back and forths with their mom and those kind of things. However, it's it's still like it's a work in progress for me, but I have the children there and I know like, man, they're looking at me and they pick up on all of this. They pick up on the energy. They know, I've been plenty of times where my daughter has said to me, I know you and mom don't like each other, such and such, such and such, such and such. And it's like, to be honest with you, although it's true, I know that it's like, man, why is my 7-year old having that reality, and confronting and showing me that we have made that clear that that's our reality. And so just this struggle of me and my evolution and my growth and getting better but making mistakes along the way versus wanting to be the best version for the children and not let them see me and my mistakes, not let them be affected by my lack of growth or lack of evolution in certain areas. So that's like essentially the main area that's been on my mind. And it's also been around me. I've been seeing it through other interactions, whether it be through family, affiliates, friends, etc., where a lot of us are having these type of situations where our children are affected by our growth or our lack thereof or our process, better said, our process. So I'm curious about, I'd like to discuss what are some of the ways that would benefit us in navigating our journey while we have people who are looking at us and being affected by us, where it almost feels like you don't have that much room for error. It feels like I can't make too many mistakes because I've got two little ones that are sitting there, and directly affected by every single thing I do. And have you experienced anything like that?
Yes, I most certainly have experienced it, and I can share with you what my current understandings are. I also have many clients who are in sometimes very extreme and dire situations with alcoholic or drug addict co-parenters or people who are really aggressive and malicious and who are also talking to me this same conversation. They're asking me, what is it that they can do to protect themselves and the children, or the children themselves through the children. And I think the thing I would like to share with everyone is that the children do know what's going on. That they not only know because they're smart and they're telepathic and they're, uh, before you're 7, before your pineal calcifies, you know what people are thinking. Babies know what people are thinking. Small animals know what people are thinking. So once they get older than 7 and the toxins in the water and the food start to calcify the pineal gland, then they don't know. But there's even more than that. There's so much more than what we're looking at. The children are connected to the living DNA of both diametrically opposed parents or those harmonious parents.
Hmm.
So the, the DNA is living in the child from both threads, from the
Right.
father and the mother, and they're being fed the living DNA that's now going to produce the adult information that may show up when they're 20, 30, 40. And it is mutable and it is programmable and it is being programmed. And I think the biggest thing to understand is that one, you're not hiding anything from anybody. There are no secrets. They know what you think, whether they say it or not. They know
Yeah.
what their mother thinks, whether they say it in front of them or not. But most people don't have the goodwill to say it quietly somewhere else. They're usually
Right.
cussing people out and saying it in front of them, and or pointing a finger at them and saying, "You're just like your mother, or you're just like your father," and then the child
Mm.
feels like they're broken. So the I think the big thing to know is that what you did in your lack of understanding, you do not have to suffer it for the rest of your life or through the children. So we make decisions, and in for whatever reason we make them for, and then we grow into understanding what that decision has meant, what it involves, what does it, how does it make us greater, how does it enslave us, how does it imprison us, how does it take us further along our path of exaltation, and choose. Once you realize, like, I see that that my choices now would be different than my choices previously,
Right.
and as a result, I have children. Then you have to decide. It is the decision. The most important thing that happens next is your decision. Do you decide that the person who has gone into this joint venture with you, do you decide that they have power over it because of culture, their families, your families, the law, the way that our country is run? With understanding that there are parameters that you have to be in to be able to properly navigate the world we're in. But do you decide that they have all the power because the police give them the power, the court system gives them the power? And I have the same situation happening. A lot of grandparents are being denied children, where they cannot see the children because they believe in COVID, they didn't believe in the shots, or they didn't, or they did, and the children now are retaliating against the parents. It's exactly the same scenario where I'll say it's the same thing I'm going to say to parents your age is the same thing I say to grandparents who are not being allowed to see their children. It's like you have to decide that that is your DNA, and because it is your DNA, you will not be denied your DNA. You will not be denied the influence that is in your birthright, that is given through creation, that's your DNA. Once you decide that, other things become clearer. That you then become willing to do or take the steps or make the money or sacrifice or pay the bill, whatever is necessary, then becomes the focus of your energy.
Hmm.
And then, I know that you have shared with me that when you were in court in Florida, that you saw people giving up their children. Like, can I just give this child back to her?
Listen, that I was blown away. I was in the courthouse trying to do, on that side of things, the steps to make sure that I was having a full, respectful and proper interaction with my children. And in the person next to me, or the next person who was saw, was literally, he was going there asking. He was like, "Hey, I've been going through this, that, and the third, and I keep going back and forth to jail, et cetera, et cetera. And is there any way I could just?" This is what he said verbatim. He said, "Is there any way I could just sign it over to her?" And I was like, I couldn't believe I just heard what I had heard. Literally, I said, "What?" Like, just the contrast of the experiences. While I'm here striving to be and doing what I think is what I'm who I want to be and what I'm supposed to do. And mind you, there's someone else who's sitting here saying, "Can I just sign it over to her?" Like that. I was mind blown. Literally, like, I could not believe that was a thing at all.
And so that is an example of someone feeling that the other person has the deck stacked in their favor, that the other person has the power. Often people mistakenly think that the law gives them the power, or their family, or their status, or money gives them the power. It's not true. You give them power by allowing them or permitting them to stop you,
Mhm.
whether you're a grandparent or a parent. So the first thing that must happen is you have to build up this clarity within you. That's my DNA. That belongs to me. It is
Yep.
mine, and I will not be denied what the creation has given me. And then once you have that level of clarity, then everything else becomes, you already know what the next steps are. Whatever you have to do, that's within, the confines of civilized behavior, that's what you're going to be doing. And if it means you have to go to court and you have to pay fines and if you have to fill out forms and if you have to hire a lawyer, that's what it means.
So
And
I
that you have
remember.
already decided that that's whatever is needed to make sure that you lose the connection and turn over your rights to your DNA to someone who you may or may not be in agreement with.
Right.
So the most important thing is you and your decision making. Often we have a lot of excuses. We think a lot of things about how, well, the court's going to side with them, or their family, or my family, or they think this, or they think that. But that's not how things work. What works is your determination and will to make it so is what works. And that's what I have learned. I have learned that it doesn't matter what my family and what culture and what everybody else says. What matters is what am I willing to do to protect or be in contact with my children. And then that then determines my next steps. I can't decide what my next step is until I decide who I am in that relationship. Who am I? Am I the father of these children? Is this my DNA that even though it didn't work out, is this how this will happen? So that's the number one thing. And then the next thing is to remember that children hear everything, whether you say it inside your head or outside your head. You're driving in the car and you thinking, cussing out the person who you just picked up the children from because they said something to you. The children hear that. Don't think that the children don't, especially if they're under 7. They do. They see and hear through the walls. They see and hear everything. And then
Yeah.
they start to lose that over time. And make sure that you honor that and don't gaslight them.
Mm.
Don't gaslight them. Don't say, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
You know, I think that to remember to look into the eyes of the children and know they are you, and that, you would be lying to yourself. Lying
So
will not produce good things in the
yeah.
end.
So I'm curious about. I want to focus on the reality of. So that's like about how interacting with the children and the clarity that you need to have for self in navigating all of those different trials that you go through with those situations. But also I'm curious about the what is when you are just like a lot of us who are attracted to this channel, to working with of the sun, and a lot of us who are just in a certain time in life where we're focused on becoming greater versions of our own selves, but we know that that process involves trial and error. That process involves current mistakes. That process involves detaching from prior things and quite a few of those type of things. How how should we feel about our reality, our errors, or our growth process, and how our children are affected by that? So even for in the worldly sense of like people who have children and feel like I'm not financially where I want to be, but I already have the children, and they're feeling guilty because they can't give the children every single thing that they wish they could, and all those kind of like emotions and feelings and guilt and things like that that come up because we're still on our journey while also having little people who are sharing in that journey with us, but then having their journey, and now we're affecting their journey. Like it's a whole thing. So how? What are some of the ways we should think about or feel about the fact that we're in our process, but our children are tied to us in our process?
So, some of the decisions I made with you and your siblings had to
Can't hear you.
do some of some of the decisions that I made. Can you hear me now? No, you can't hear. Let's see.
Did your audio? Can you hear me? Give a thumbs
Yes,
up
I
if you
can
can
hear
hear
you
me.
fine.
We can't. I can't hear you at all. Check and make sure your mic is right.
Okay, I am. I think I'm being monitored.
Uh
One
oh.
second.
She's
Can you
definitely
hear me
saying
now?
something. Oh. Oh, you can. Okay, so I just can't hear you. That's interesting. The chat
Okay,
can
the
hear you.
people in the audience can hear both of us.
Yeah, but we can't hear each other.
Yeah, but we're
I
talking
love
to
that.
each other.
That's awesome. Okay, now this could be interesting. Let's see. Let's see if I can play with something. Let's see if I can get to hear you. Doot, 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 doot.
All right, do you need me to talk? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I feel like the telephone commercial. Can you hear me now?
You can still hear me, correct?
I can still hear you.
All right. So only
It's
I
something on
cannot
your
hear
end.
you.
It's something on your end because your audio is coming through fine.
Are you speaking to the chat? Because I can't hear you.
IT
Everybody
is
hang
here.
tight with us for a second.
This is IT reporting in.
IT has just arrived.
It's likely something on your end.
We
Your
can't hear you.
So I'm gonna remove you and then add you back in. Okay?
Okay.
You can hear me. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging with us. This is very interesting. I love how you all can hear both of us, but we can't hear each other. Joanna, we're gonna get back to that question in a second because I needs to know the answer. One moment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Hmm. Nada. Very interesting.
If you have, is there someone else there with you that you could hear me through their phone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
And I still can't hear you. Hmm. Okay, if you would, go ahead and answer the question for everybody in the chat. Speak to the chat while I work on hearing you, okay?
All right.
And just carry forth with your unlimited wisdom, okay? Hold it down for the crew. And I'm going to work on hearing you. All right, go
Okay.
ahead. Just
All
keep
right.
rolling.
So, some of the things that happened in the course of my own experience with people coming against different ideas, and it applies to the grandparents who are not being able to see children. It applies to people who are divorced or separated, who have mutual custody. There is nothing greater than your decision that you will not be denied your rights to your child, because that then sets up everything else to work in your favor. So then it becomes clear to you that your emotional stability and mastery become very important, because you then have to not show the children emotional instability, because you have decided that they are your DNA and they are relevant and important, and that whatever the instability that you are in disagreement with on the other side will show itself. So you give the children contrast with, if something on one side is, if they're not feeding them right, or they're talking wrong to them, or they're exposing them to other things, then your uprightness gives the children the contrast. And they then learn this is what happens with daddy, and this is what happens with mommy, and this feels good, or this doesn't feel good, or maybe they both feel good. So the understanding that it then becomes incumbent upon you after you make a decision that you now have to correct whatever you are familiar with on the other side, especially when it's like the child gets equal weeks, where there's a 1 week where they're exposed to one level of behavior, and the next week there's another. The children are smart enough to understand what is acceptable and what is not in each environment. And then there's this detoxing or deprogramming of the child once you get them back home again. And this is something that often comes up because of people's habits and what they're willing to expose children to, and then what the other parent hears about. Since you cannot control what the other parent's doing, the idea is to control who you are and make it clear and definitive, where you're not all over the board, wishy-washy about who you are and what you will do, where they have the stability of you. Back to the question that Aha was asking about, we've made decisions, all of us make decisions in our lesser understandings of being younger, not having encountered anything, not knowing what was going to happen, not recognizing what we were getting into, not having the levels of maturity to handle certain personalities and types. And this is something you can't punish yourself for. You can assess where you are in your own equation. Like, oh, here I am, I'm 30 years old, I have 3 children, and I don't have the partner, and I need more resources and family support, and I don't have the person, and I'm going to do the things that let my children have the greatest expectation of their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, and their father, because that's what's needed in the children's life. They need more than one person. You need a village. And then the things that the children ask you questions about, well, why is granddaddy, always smell like alcohol? Or why is it that so-and-so is doing something? Then you answer it honestly. You say, they are working with themselves, or they're not working with themselves. This is something that good you can see it, because then you will see that it's not something you want to do. So this is part of what good you can see it, because then you will see that it's not something you want to do. This is part. I'm hearing myself. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? No? All right. So the idea of making sure you don't punish yourself and then therefore punish the guilt. If you feel guilty that you have made a choice that has not worked out in the way you thought it was, this is unfortunate for you. Instead of having the thought, oh, I am confronted with something that's going to stretch me to find a solution. So I'm going to have to figure out how to keep my children as much as I can in this world, and with this influence, keep them in accord with what I see to be true and right and the direction I want them to go in. That then means that you may have to tighten up your own behavior. You may have to stop doing whatever you're doing every Friday and Saturday night. You may have to consider, what are you doing in front of them? Are you doing things that you're willing to allow them to do? So I'm not being in judgment. I'm just saying, are you choosing your own standards? Are you, eating in front of them the things that you want them to choose to eat? Are you giving them structure at bedtime because you know that they need to sleep to grow? Are you doing those kinds of things? And even if the other side is not, the children will feel better when they get rest. They'll feel better if they're not asleep with their devices. They'll feel better if they wake up and are cared for and are bathed and treated a certain way. So they will recognize the contrast. Ahad, can you hear me yet? No. Are you
Mahad,
hearing
can you
me?
hear me yet?
I can hear uh in a unique way, in a weird way. However, we can both be heard, but
Okay.
this is not the picture perfect setup, and I appreciate everybody's patience with this. Uh we needed to hear that answer. I can tell you that for sure, and we wasn't gonna allow that to stop because this is very very important and very close to a lot of our hearts and feelings, and that's kind of like the main premise of why I think that these are important discussions to have, because not only is this real for us, but these are not just like things we want to get better at. These are the most important type of conversations and things that we're navigating and figuring out. Uh, Most important as far as for how we feel, for our morale and our spirits, but also for the direction of our family's path. Like you always say, like our children and grandchildren and unborn great grandchildren, etc. So, um, uh, I'm glad that you were able to give us insight and guidance on how to approach this. I do think that we'll need to, or I would like to explore a little more of this conversation in another setting again, where we can get into maybe a little more of the things, the some of the things that we can do to create a different dynamic for the future iterations of having children. So, if any of us are looking to have children in the future, if we're looking to build kind of family and community, what are some of the ways that you think would be ideal to go about that? And I think that like that's another part of this whole dynamic, because of course we identify what is and where things are right now, and we want to spend a lot of energy clearing and resolving, but we also want to have a plan for the future and have a plan on how to do better, so to say, or to just be more evolved in how we have our children and have our families and communities. So I think that that's a thread of the conversation we should continue, if you're open to doing that in the next conversation we have.
Yes, but before I don't know if you're ready to end this one, I'd like to point out something you shared with me that made me feel so like you are on the right path. You shared with me that in your previous relationship, that the two of you had had a conversation about how far will you go, like no matter what the argument is. I don't know if you remember this. This is a long time ago. You told me this, that the person would only go, they would never drop below a certain level in their way they spoke to you and the way you spoke to them. And I think that's relevant here because it makes a difference with the children, whether the children grow up thinking that it's okay to call their mother and all other women or all men, whatever the parent is saying in anger and in high emotion to their partner, and they hear it or they know it or they sense it or they intuit it. So, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do know what you're referring to. I do know that that is takes both to tango, and I know that my relationship, current and future, not just romantic relationships, will, to the absolute best of my ability, be with that same foundation of, like, to me, it's about who the people are individually, who you want to be for your own self, and who I want to be. And we have to be, and again, I know this goes into a whole different conversation. However, the idea of pursuing relationships, and I would say that anybody that I want to have, a future with, I would hope that their foundation of who they are committed to being, their moral compass, and all those things will only allow a certain bandwidth or amount of uh, even if I dropped into the lowest version of myself, it doesn't cross into hell, you know? Like that kind of thing. So, although, I've had a lot of pre-discussions and conversations, and let's set the table now. Let's be clear on where we stand, blah blah blah. In the heat of the moment, a lot of those things go out the window, unfortunately. Um, However, building a track record in a relationship where a person is showing you who they are consistently, it does allow you to build into some level of trust of who they will be when, when things are not as ideal, or when they are ideal and things like that. But again, that's a whole nother conversation, because then that crosses into who we get, how we pick our partners and those kind of things like that. I do
Well,
think that,
the reason I brought it up is because it informs the clarity of the child. The child is a mass of completed ideas from both parents. The more clarity, the more parameters, the more determined, the more willful you are about how things will be in the child. So I'm making this distinction that it's not just what we can see, it's the unseen aspects of our biology and the genetics, and we feed that with our will to do so. So when you determine nobody will talk to you below, that you will not, it's not even about someone else, that you will not go below a certain level, you're programming your DNA.
yeah.
So it applies in this situation because these are the levels of parameters that you want to make sure is in the DNA and representative of who you are as creation, part of that creation.
And that when you say about the clarity you got to have about what you will experience or not, that kind of goes into your ability to attract that too. Like
Of course, of course.
I know for me, before I recognized or realized what what kind of experience, there were some things in the world, experiences in the world I just never had. So I never knew, oh, I'm not having that. So I never had the clarity to choose, let me not attract something like that. So I was kind of very willy nilly with my manifestation and my attraction
Right,
because there were some things I just didn't know to consider. I just
right.
didn't, I was very one track mind about what I was pursuing or what I'm pursuing. And even now, having a more well rounded experiences, I still haven't experienced nearly all the things. However, I know that there's a baseline of things that I know are acceptable and non-acceptable, permissible or not. And this is a juicy conversation. And I thought this was going to be really cool and cute to do it like, oh, I'm out here in Florida and you're there and we're having this conversation live and just like me and you would on the phone, FaceTime. But because of the technical difficulties and it's not flowing exactly the way I'd love it to, we will part two this conversation. And we'll continue. So if you don't mind, I want to go ahead and wrap up
Okay.
because of the, just to make sure there's a
We'll save
smoothness
the
and
questions
communication.
in the chat for next time.
Yeah, and a few people have spoken to me on a couple things to bring up and mention to you concerning this type of topic. So I'll have that, and we might even break into the how to start attracting the right kind of partners and having clarity on what kind of partnership you want. Is this a forever partnership? Is this a parent we're coming together to have children partnership? Is this a, we're coming together to take over the, whatever, Sandy Springs, Georgia, we're about to run these run these streets, whatever it might be, whatever kind of partnership, what kind of, how to attract the exact partnership for you. That might be another interesting lane to start pursuing as well. So either way, I'd like to thank everyone for being patient with us and being a part of this conversation. This is how it goes, when we're dealing with our real life journeys. So I'm in Florida right now. Mom's in Georgia, and we're gonna continue this conversation when I'm back in Georgia. And I appreciate everybody again. I appreciate In Lakesh Studio One for supporting and sponsoring this episode of High Frequency Living and the next as well. Who knows? We might even pop in with a pop up live bonus episode when I get back to Georgia, just to make sure everybody, we can pick up this thread smoothly. I think that might be a good idea actually. So stay tuned. I'm gonna try to get on your calendar for that. Okay, Mom.
Okay.
All right. Again, thank you everyone. Stay tuned for an announcement on our social medias if and when we do our little pop-up live to continue this conversation. Our Instagram is We Are of the Sun. That's the Of the Sun Instagram. We also have High Frequency Living Instagram as well, which has a lot of videos, clips, and some lifestyle things that we're adding to our presentation because we want to encourage a high frequency life and living, and that's in all areas: food, clothing, shelter, etc. So, again, thank you everyone, and we will pick up this thread within a few days and stay on the lookout for announcements on that. Have a great evening. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you. Invocation Veritas,
And
honor,
the Cash
respect, and
Veritas.
gratitude to everyone. Thank you.